Hi, it's Greg Hurrell here with another Vim screencast, and the topic today is going to be resolving merge conflicts in Vim. And this is kind of a logical follow-up to my last screencast where I introduced this VCS jump plugin. Because one of the things this plugin does is it provides you with a way to jump between conflicting hunks when you're doing a merge conflict. And so today we're going to look at how you would solve merge conflicts. And to do that, I've set up an example here in this repo where I have some commits on the master branch and I have some commits on a topic branch. And I happen to know that these are going to conflict when I try to merge them because I've made changes in the same parts of the file on both branches. So we're actually going to go through the exercise of solving the merge conflict to just explore this problem space. And I think one thing that's interesting about merge conflicts is even though they're totally mundane in the sense that they can easily happen all the time, and they do happen all the time, they still end up being one of the hardest parts of our job. It can be really hard to understand what's going on in a merge conflict situation. And I find that it's the time of day during my job where I have to maintain the highest level of concentration, because otherwise I will almost certainly get it wrong. And for something that we do so routinely, it's kind of surprising that it's that hard. I also find it hard to talk about. So I'm going to do my best to explain this as clearly as I can, but I do think that even so, it's going to be hard for me to explain, and hopefully you can bear with me as I go through this. So one of the first things that I think is hard to understand about merge conflicts is interpreting the merge conflict markers in the file, especially when you work in a world where some of the time you're doing a merge and some of the time you're doing a rebase. In terms of what most of us do, like the place where we're actually going to see merge conflicts the most is going to be rebasing locally, so that's how I'm going to focus the discussion. But you can actually think about merging and rebasing as basically the same operation, but in reverse. So let me explain what I mean by that. In this example here that I've got on the screen, I currently have the topic branch checked out, and that's evident because the word head appears there. So my work tree is currently pointing at this topic branch. If I run git merge master, it's going to try to bring the changes from master into my branch. So it's kind of like a pull operation in the sense that it's bringing something from somewhere else into my changes. You can think of a rebase as the reverse operation. And the reason why is because in a rebase, you're effectively taking the commits on the topic branch and you're replaying them on top of the master branch. And in a sense, that replaying on top is bringing the changes from the topic branch into the master branch. So the directionality is the opposite. Instead of pulling changes from the master branch into the current work tree, you're pushing changes from the current work tree into the master branch. And when you interpret merge conflict markers, that changes the way you must read the markers in the file. So I made some notes on my wiki to make this a little bit easy to look up. And so we have an example here where we have a typical merge conflict marker where one side thinks it should be foo and the other side thinks it should be bar. What is the top and what is the bottom? Well, the top is always the branch that you're merging into. So in the case of running git merge, when you're on your topic branch, the changes at the top are going to be your local changes. They're going to be the changes in the topic branch. And the changes on the bottom are going to be the changes from the master branch. But in a rebase situation, because the directionality is flipped, the order of the things in the merge conflict markers is also flipped. So the top is still the changes that you're trying to merge, the changes from the branch that you're trying to merge into. But because you're rebasing, it means that the changes at the top aren't your local changes, they're the master branch changes. So the order is flipped. And if that is hard to remember, it doesn't surprise me if you think it's hard to remember, which is why I made these notes, because I always forgot it. And I also made like a cheat sheet here as well, where it just describes the differences between what the top and the bottom show when you're in a different situation, whether it be a merge, a rebase, or a stash. However, what I've shown here is actually a simplified example, because Git has a setting that you can apply that shows a different kind of merge marker. So let's look that up. Man git config, and I believe it's merge conflict style or something like that. Conflict style. So as it says here, this adds an additional hunk between the merge conflict markers. So instead of just seeing the changes on the branch that you're trying to merge into and the changes from the other branch, you see in the middle what things used to look like at the merge base. So what is the merge base? Let's show this again. In this case, the merge base is this commit here, 9BA837DB. It's basically the nearest common ancestor of the two branches. So in my Git repo, I have that setting turned on. Oops, let's show you that. Git config merge conflict style. Oops, diff3. And I also have it set in my Mercurial HGRC, so it's down here. The name is slightly different. I don't know if this is a Facebook specific thing or not, because it's got the word internal there. I can't remember. I used to use Mercurial at my old job, and I added the setting, and it gives me the same 3-hunk diff conflict markers. So try it. If you're a Mercurial user, it might work. I don't have any reason to use Mercurial anymore, so don't know. On my wiki, I also have this understanding Mercurial conflict markers, which is basically the analog of the understanding Git conflict markers page. And as you can see here, this is what changes look like when you've got this 3-way diff conflict marking enabled. So you have changes from one side, changes from the other side, and then what things used to look like at the merge base. I find this often gives me enough context that just by looking at a hunk like this, I can figure out how I should basically marry the changes together. So let's go now through our example of trying to merge. As I said, I think what's most common for most developers nowadays is you're actually going to be rebasing. So let's do that. Just to show once again what we have here, I've got the topic branch. I'm going to try to rebase it on top of master. And lo and behold, we have a conflict. Surprise, surprise. So if I run git status, I'll see which file has the conflict. Now, even though I will in a minute show you how to use Vim's diff mode, the way I would normally resolve a merge conflict is actually going to be just to open the file in Vim. So I've already forgotten what file had the conflict. It was the tmux.conf, so let's open that. Tmux, if I could just spell it right, there we go. So I'll usually land in a file and I'll search for head. Right? As I said, VCS jump can also do this for you. So if I hit the binding for VCS jump and instead of running the diff subcommand, I run the merge subcommand, it will populate the quick fix listing with a list of locations where there are merge conflict markers. In this case, there's only one conflict, so it's not super useful, but if you had conflicts in multiple files, this would be a really good way to jump between them. But this is a trivial example, so we just look for the merge conflict, and you can see here, this middle section here, where it says merged common ancestors, that's how this file used to look at the merge base. So the common ancestor, where all this development started. The changes at the top, remember, are the changes that changes from the branch that I'm trying to merge into. And because this is a rebase, the branch I'm trying to merge into is master. So you can see here, the master branch wanted to comment out this line, and then underneath it, write unbind key in lowercase. The changes at the bottom are the changes from the other branch that I'm trying to merge into. And so the other branch, in this case the topic branch, commented out that line and tried to add something above it. Unbind key down, all in uppercase. So usually just by looking at this, knowing which side is which and what things used to look like, I can pick a winner and I just edit the file. In this case, I'm not even going to pick a winner, but basically, let's imagine I want to roll back both changes and I want just to keep things the way they were, right? So I delete everything and put it back the way it was, save the file, and I'm done. That would be one way to resolve it. Another thing that can sometimes happen, though, is that you'll be looking at this and you still won't have enough context to understand what really happened. And maybe you've blown away the rebase log, so you don't know what commit it was trying to apply at the time this happened. There's a nifty command in Vim called show current patch, where this sometimes gives you enough context to understand which is the patch which isn't currently applying. So in this case, I can see, okay, it's trying to apply the second commit, and the intent of this commit was to do what you can see there in the diff. And that can sometimes give you enough of a hint to understand how to resolve the conflict. The other thing that I would remark about this is that even though this 3-way diff conflict marker shows you how things used to look at the merge base, one thing to bear in mind is that the things that are outside the merge conflict marker might confuse you because they are the result of whatever happened previously. So in the case of our topic branches here, there are 3 commits on each branch. So there might be changes up here above the conflict marker or below the config marker that merge without conflict. And what that means is what I'm seeing here at the top of the file could be the combination of changes on 2 branches, or it might be that only one of the branches touched that part of the file, or it might be that none of them touched that part of the file. But the point is that the thing outside the merge conflict markers doesn't necessarily mean that nothing happened. Something may have happened, it just happened without conflict. And that can make it confusing as well if you end up looking at it and it's like, I really don't know what I'm looking at here because it doesn't look like the history of the repo looked like at any time because this is the first time we've combined those 2 changes in a particular way to produce that result. Which is why sometimes doing what I just did of the rebase show current patch can be helpful because it'll provide you with a little more context of what the intent of a particular change was, because you can also change the amount of context. Just say there's not enough in the diff there, you could like, oops, is it like C25? I think I have to do that with git show to make that work. So I'm going to grab the hash. I'm going to do git show u25 and paste it, and now I have more context. So sometimes it's necessary to do that to see what was really going on here when this change was being made. Because in general, I mean, the whole point of a merge conflict is that it requires human intelligence to solve. There's no machine-driven way to figure out what the intent or the combined intent of the 2 branches was. You have to actually think about it. And this is one of the things that makes merge conflicts hard. So, we have those tools up our sleeve for understanding merge conflicts. Now I'm finally going to get to the part which people probably wanted to see, which is how do you solve merge conflicts using Vim's built-in diff view. So I am going to refer you to this article that was published a while back on how to solve merge conflicts with Vim, and I'll include a link to this. The fundamental suggestion though here is use the fugitive plugin and set up some intuitive bindings to pull changes from one side or the other, and this will be the UI that you use. So I'm going to show you that in action now. So my binding that I've made for this is local leader DD. So I'm going to hit that. And what this does, it keeps the file as it exists on disk in the middle here. And then on the left and right, it shows what the file looked like according to one branch and what it should look like according to the other. And these lines here that are just dots, those correspond to lines that exist in the middle file but don't exist in this version of the file. So this version here corresponds to the version on the left corresponds to the top half of the conflict marker, and the version on the right corresponds to the bottom half. And so with bindings, I mean, this is a kind of a silly example because the hunks are so tiny, but I could hit a binding to pull the changes from one side into the middle. So just say, for example, I wanted the change. I'm going to just, to make this easy now, I'm going to delete the merge base version so that it's more visually clear what should happen. You can see here on one side we've got the changes from the left on one, and then underneath the line we've got the changes from the right. Just say I want the changes from the right to prevail. I'll hit my binding, which in my case is local leader DL, and it pulled the changes from the right. So in other words, except I don't know if it actually did. It certainly left the head marker there, which is not expected. The comment is there, but what it really should have done is put unbind key down. I think it might not work in this case, either because I deleted the wrong marker. Let's try deleting the other marker. No, it doesn't look right to me, but let's try it again. So let's pull the change from the left. Yeah, it also didn't work. I think it's confused because the hunks are so small. They're only like 1 or 2 lines, and it's not pulling up across quickly. But in theory, it should work. I personally find this UI is not super helpful to me. The tools that I already showed you of looking at it in the command line using git rebase show current patch and just like looking at these conflict markers are usually enough for me. The last thing that I want to show related to solving git conflicts is that there is a setting in Git that enables you to reuse a previously recorded merge conflict resolution. And what that means is if you have a topic branch that you have to rebase, and for whatever reason it can't be merged, and you have to keep rebasing it again and again and again, you should in theory only have to solve a given merge conflict once, because Git can remember the choice you made to resolve a particular conflict. So that one is so-called re. Somewhere in here, re enabled. So you should turn this on in your Git config. It basically activates the recording of resolved conflicts. So that's all I got to say about merge conflicts. It is a confusing topic, but I hope that what I showed here was in some way helpful to you. And if you like this kind of content, hit the subscribe button and I will have more for you in the future. See you later.